All right, so we are going to be using your smartphone to capture good content. All right, what I have here is a Galaxy S10. Before this, I had a Galaxy Note 5 that was made back in like 2015 or so, and that could do what I'm about to show you. So I imagine those of you watching this, you probably have an iPhone that can do what I'm about to show you too. So just translate everything that I'm doing to iPhone, since I don't have one yet. I'm an Android guy. They seem to be a little bit longer lasting. So here we go. We're gonna get into some very, very basic camera principles, right? So I'm gonna ask you to bring up your phone, follow along, and do this with me. We're gonna bring up your camera app, okay? So bring up your camera app, right? And here you are. You have your camera. You're seeing me, you're seeing this, right? And you can take pictures now. Woohoo! But when you go out into the world, your camera isn't as good as you would like it to be. You can have more control. And cameras nowadays, particularly on smartphones, have what they call a Pro mode. So in the Android, you have more, and then they give you an option. You have Pro for cameras, Pro for video, hyperlapse, slow motion, all that kind of. We don't want to get into that. We just want to give you more. We want to get you more comfortable with being in manual mode. And what I'm about to show you with the phone, once you do get a camera, you can still implement a lot of these principles in your camera as well. So go to Pro, and as you can see, it changes a little bit. It gets a little blue. So what we're gonna do is, you see that you have a little bit more things to choose from. And I got guys texting me all kind of places. I'm a PS4 guy, and they're like, where are you at? You're not on Warzone. I'm doing other stuff. Anyway, the color changes. Green is not green, it's like a bluish tint, right? In this, you have the ISO to the far left. You have the f-stop. You have we have one other selection there. Then you have the focus. Then you have the light, temperature. And then of course you have the mode manual. We want to keep it on manual. So boom, go back. What we want to do is give you an idea that you can control not just the light, but the color, right? So not to the far right, but the 1 second after that is the color, the temperature, they call it. Right now it's at 29,000 Kelvin, I think. You want to, basically, be honest with you, I just go by sight. If you see green here, then just turn the level until it is green in your phone as well. As close to the green as you see in reality. Your camera, you're trying to get your camera to match your God-given eye, right? The eye is God's invention. The camera is man's invention to replicate the eye. So you want to get the camera to look at how you're seeing. Hopefully you have good vision. So yeah. Now that's about right. So we went from 29 to 49. And this could be because the light in here is a certain type of way, whatever. When you go outside, you'll probably have to change it again because it's a different environment, different lighting. Now we're not dealing with the inside light, now we're dealing with the sun. So all of these things you constantly have to take into account. But once you do it in that environment, unless that environment is constantly changing, you'll probably only have to do it one time. That's a good thing about it. This is what they call the f-stop, or the shutter speed, or the aperture. They kind of blend together in a lot of cameras. The shutter speed is the amount of frames that the camera takes with each click. I don't know if I said that right, but whatever, you'll get it. So right now it is positioned at, for one shot, you get 1,000 frames, okay, which is pretty fast. That is pretty fast when it comes to if you're doing if you're taking pictures of sporting events. This selection right here will make it so that when you capture your son or daughter, they're playing soccer and they're in motion, you won't get that blur too much. You'll get a very solid still photo of them in action. The more this is upwards, the more crisp your shot will be when you capture them in the moment of action. But as you can see here, it darkened as you went up in shutter speed. Now, this is where the game of balance comes in, right? You want to get a nice balance of light and shutter speed depending on what you're shooting. If you're shooting an action scene or a sporting event or something like that, you obviously want it as high as you can, but you don't want it to be as dark, right? You still want to keep some light. So you have this shutter speed, right? But that's not all. You also have the ISO levels to the far left. Now this is just nothing but light. It just adds light to the situation. It doesn't tug or pull on anything, just like the aperture and the shutter speed does. It's just its own thing. And it adds light to whatever situation you want. Now, unfortunately now, since we're only dealing with our phone, we're already at the top, 32,000 ISO level. The Samsung S10 only goes up to 32,000. Everything else obviously gets dark. So if I'm taking an action photo, I'm at my wit's end when it comes to the ISO level. So I have to bargain now with my shutter speed. And 1,000 seems pretty good. If there were anything going on in here, I would be able to capture something fairly decent. But I wouldn't be able to get any more clarity from there without it getting dangerously dark, right? So let's dive in the computer for a sec, okay? Let's see what definitions they give us. So for the ISO, right? They said the higher the ISO rating, the greater the firm's ability to capture images taken in low light. Refers to the sensitivity and the signal gain. So one thing about ISO is that you can obviously turn it up as high as you can, but you will be compromising the quality of your image. So a lot of times when you turn the ISO all the way up, you'll start to get a graininess that doesn't really make the image look very good. So there's the balance that you get with the ISO. So with the aperture, as we discussed, the aperture and the shutter speed are kind of together. They're in bed with each other, right? If you change the aperture, you change the shutter speed. The f-stop, as they call it, gives more exposure because they represent larger apertures, while the f-stop, higher the f-stop gives less exposure because they represent smaller apertures. Shutter speed, same thing. They have a nice little graph here that we can take a look at. So the best thing that I can tell you to do is just go out and shoot. You'll get a better understanding of what ISO really does, aperture and all that kind of stuff, right? Any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm here for you anytime you want me, all right?